Do you like urban legends? If you do, then you're in luck because today we're going to be exploring the LABO tapes found on the channel PinoyCryptids. In this series, it's about a woman with a slash face, an insatiable hunger, gruesome deaths, a parasite, and a lot of tragedies. If that very short summary catches your interest at all, then sit back, relax, maybe get a snack, and as always, my name is Estrella. Let's explore. Tape 1. LABO, Analog Horror. Firstly, the video opens with a broadcast showing a peaceful scenery paired with music until abruptly an emergency alert system took over. The time is 9:47 p.m. and it's about a child abduction. The video then switches away to an audio recording about a person who witnessed a strange woman hurting a child. They explain how the woman had a horrible face with huge slashes or a slit that stretched from her eye to her lip. They also said, "Please hurry," likely hinting to us that this audio is probably from a phone call to the police. And towards the end, the audio corrupts and we then switch away to a blurred image of a person, then a radio with text. The text welcomes the listener and states that a lot of children are vanishing without a trace. One kid we learn about is Ella, and she was last seen by a cornfield 2 kilometers from her home, and at the time it seemed like she was talking to someone. Of course, the authorities are searching the area, however there are no results. After this, we then see an image of a cornfield in which a girl appears in, but the cornfield then suddenly vanishes, leaving only the girl behind. We also see text, and when translated, it reads, "Here are the children, airmen." After this, we get shown an image of the girl Ella, who was mentioned previously, and then an image of a rabbit. Crying could also be heard in the background along with fast footsteps before we hear a slimy impact noise. And at the end of the video, we get a quick jump scare. How nice! As for the description, we see a collection of numbers which could be coordinates, and according to the comment section, it's pointing us towards the direction of the Philippines. Speaking of which, let's quickly talk about Maria Labo. It's a popular urban legend in the Philippines, which is a story about a woman named Maria. In the story, she was driven to madness due to the treatment she received from her employers when she was working overseas as a caretaker, and after returning home, she killed her own children to cook them into dishes. She continued these gruesome acts by luring unsuspected victims and cooking them alive. There's multiple variations from what I've seen and read, but these are the main points of the story. And her story is meant to be a cautionary tale about the dangers of working overseas, or maybe something about demon possessions, at least I think according to my research. If I got a detail wrong, feel free to correct me. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this urban legend, besides the fact that it's from the Philippines, is because just like the name of the tale, Maria Labo, Labo is in the title of this video, and the video did mention a strange woman with a disfigured face, and Maria, in the story, can be described as having a disfigured appearance. Well, there's a little more to it, but we'll get to that later. This is why I'm bringing it up now, because it's obviously very important throughout the rest of the series. Also at the end, where we see a rabbit and hear a young child crying before hearing an impact noise, could also be connected to the urban legend if you think about it. Whenever you think about rabbits, you usually see them as prey, so the ending must be implying that Marina is hunting down children like hunters hunting down rabbits. That makes sense to me, I guess. Anyways, just keep in mind the urban legend is all I'm saying. With that being said, let's now continue on to the next video. Tape 2. Guilty, Analog Horror. This video opens with a white silhouette of a person with text in the corner that reads, "You're not alone right now. It's your fault. You know that, right? You couldn't even help me, and yet you were the one who was scared. It's your fault. Cold. It's cold here. I can't feel anything. I can't scream. I can't even feel my face. I was left to rot." With that final sentence, we see a dirty bag surrounded by darkness and suddenly switch to a computer login screen. We also hear an audio recording with 2 individuals, likely officers or investigators, talking about a case in which an eyewitness was questioned, all the murdered children were discovered to be related to one another, and the last person seen with the children was a woman. Not only that, but the investigators were shocked by the events of this crime that they believe it could be related to organ trafficking. Now, returning back to the login screen, it was soon unlocked, and the first thing we see is a Philippines Police Department report centering around Ella. She was found deceased, and according to eyewitnesses, she was playing with a friend before suddenly disappearing, and the friend said Ella was last seen by the road near the corn plantation talking to someone. We also see a report showing the state of the victim's body. There were signs of a struggle, severe stretches located on the left knee and elbow, the leg was crudely chopped, the jaw was removed by force, and the victim's innards were taken, and lastly, there was a large cut on the throat. After this, we see a TV with a frightening missing-jawed face on screen before switching to a view inside the cornfield pointing towards the moon. Dogs could be heard along with police sirens and the police talking through radios. And in the end of the video, we see dark surroundings with someone that has a slash on their face. Obviously, the purpose of this video is to give us extra information about Ella's case. However, what I find interesting is the text that we read in the beginning of the video. Since Ella's jaw was missing, it could be connected to the text which said, "I can't scream," and the line, "I was left to rot," could connect to Ella's friend, who left Ella behind when she was talking to this mysterious person on the side of the road. Maybe I'm overanalyzing it, but a part of me does believe that this intro could be Ella. But that's just my two first cents that I wanted to throw in real quick. Another obvious thing that I could point out is at the end where we saw that slashed face person. Could be Maria, probably is, most likely is. Yeah, anyways, in order to, find all this stuff out, we gotta continue on to the next video. Let's go. Tape 3, Tranquility, Analog Horror. In this video, we first see a white screen with a sphere in the middle and words appearing above it. Sins, parasite, host were repeated a few times until only sin was the only word that continues to be said. The image then inverts, turning the white into black, and as for the audio, it's a reversed recording which said, "I held them close like what any mother would, but the hunger seeped into my bones. Their cries faded as I swallowed, the tiny fingers clawing inside me. I never meant to feed on them, but now they're a part of me." How gross. Speaking of gross, we soon see a blood-stained graveled floor and hearing squishy munching noises until seeing text which, when translated, says, "Hunger. I did it again. I don't have control. I can feel everything. I can still hear their cries. This hunger is not mine. Forgive me, I did not mean it. I'll fix you. I'm still here. I'll make you return." This gets followed up by a rabbit gently falling into a bag with the sound of cheers behind it, and following behind the rabbit is a machete. Haha. The scenery then turns dark, and coming out of the bag we see a head, but that soon cuts away to Clear Skies Wellness. We're going to be hearing a recording for a therapy session which involves a patient who's a farmer that's suffering from traumatic mutism. In the recording, the therapist tries to help the patient feel comfortable. However, at the end, the patient said, "It's my fault," and we hear gunfire and the image of the patient vanishes. With that abrupt ending, we then cut away to Clear Skies Wellness. However, the footage was corrupted, and we then get confirmation that the patient is no longer with us. Authorities obviously investigated this case, and it was discovered that the patient suffered from an overuse of drugs during their therapy session, and that they had vivid hallucinations due to their antidepressants. In addition to that, the patient obviously suffered from a poor mental state, and in the end, it was concluded that he was just crazy. Also, he was heard mumbling the words, "Sin, parasite, host." Familiar, huh? Anyways, as for the conclusion of this video, we see a face that slowly appears on screen with a slashed mark. Woo! And I obviously have one thing to say before we continue. The constant repeating of sins, parasite, host. The definition of a sin is an immoral act considered to be a transgression against divine law. As for parasite, it's an organism that lives in or on an organism of another species, its host, and benefits by depriving nutrients at the other's expense. I'm getting somewhere with this, hold up. Another important thing is the text of an excruciating hunger and the lack of control when feeding. This makes me think the person with the parasite is forced to do immoral acts, which in turn messes with their psyche. Eating people is obviously a sin, but when a parasite is taking over, it's kind of hard for a person to, walk the path of good morals. So this parasite, this sinful thing, is corrupting their host. That's what I'm getting at. They're leeching off of their host, making them do bad stuff, and in turn that's making the parasite demonic thing maybe powerful. If that's the case, then the killer is kind of misunderstood due to the lack of control they have over their body because of the parasite. So, it's kind of tragic. In order to find out, let's continue. Tape 4, Gluttony, Analog Horror. Silhouettes of a young-looking child and a taller woman appear on screen until suddenly, it's just the woman and the word gluttony below her. A scream then echoes before we switch to a public safety announcement, specifically a message centering around kidnap prevention and rescue. Oh, and I'm positive the flag is just confirmation that the setting is in the Philippines. Yay! Anyways, the viewers get told to keep an eye on their children because they're vulnerable and need protection from their guardians because prevention is always the best. We also get told many cases get cold and are left unsolved, meaning every second matters. Not only that, but this situation could crush any parent, so clearly, it is important to be aware of this and to stop any potential kidnapping from happening by keeping an eye on your kids. Be responsible. We then switch to a scenery outside with a white silhouette of a person with text that needs to be translated. It reads as so. I have no control. You trust me, right? Mama will never hurt you. This soon cuts away to a view of a bowl surrounded by the word liar, and later a painting with dripping red liquid and text that says, sin without redemption. Cries of agony could also be heard in the background, and at the end of this clip, it glitches then suddenly shifts to a teddy bear with more text that needs to be translated. By the way, I'm using Google Translate and the help of the comment section, so if I get something wrong, feel free to correct me. Why did you do this to us? Stop it, Mama. How many more people have to bleed? Let's just cook like before. You don't have to be violent. Stop eating. I miss when you put us to bed. I miss when things were simpler. We still love you. We can get away. We'll take care of you. We'll find real food. We can run. Just hide. You don't have to hurt anyone. After this, we then hear a reversed audio, and according to the comments, this is what's said, roughly. You will die without the flesh. Obey the flesh. The hunger you feel is not a cure, curse, but a blessing. It's not evil, Maria. It's a survival you must give in. Don't you remember how it felt when you tasted it? What is mine is what is yours. It's not here to hurt you. It just wants you to survive. We then see a woman standing in the distance, surrounded by darkness, before the video ends. How ominous. There's also binary in the description that just translates to sin without redemption. Anyways, let me share some pretty obvious thoughts based on the text we've been shown throughout the video. In one of the texts, it almost seems like it's coming from a child talking to their mother, which has to be Maria and her children. Also in the text, it seems pretty clear that the children are scared and sad for their mother, who they still love, and the reason why is because the mother keeps eating. But her children should be dead according to the legend. Unless, I'm going to be a little random here, but what theory isn't a little weird? Anyways, the spirits of her children are acting as Maria's shoulder angels, while this parasite that's making her eat human flesh is acting as her shoulder devil. Two things in constant war against each other, living within her body, influencing her actions. The reason why I believe this is because there's also text from a mysterious being that's trying to convince Maria that what she's doing is fine and that eating flesh is a good thing and, it's not evil and it's all for survival. So yeah, I think it's the spirits of her family and then some weird demon devil thingy, inside her, whispering in her ears. Strange theory, but maybe. And if it's not her children's spirits, then it could just be the personification of Maria's guilt that's trying to stop her from doing these evil deeds, but it's not that easy. When you're infected with a parasite, things can get a little woo. Anyways, these are my theories so far. With that being said, let's now move on to the final video of the series. Tape 5, Termination, Analog Horror. It opens with a warning, acknowledge it, then an image of a pill bottle before switching to a variety of colored screens with an expression in the middle and text below it saying, do you feel joy, sorrow, anger, and lastly, guilty, which that last one lacks an expression. The scene then changes to a flower field with a girl running through it, but that was interrupted with a framed photo of two people with censored faces and the word failure below it. Weeping and screaming could also be heard in the background, and we stay there for a few seconds until we return to the question, do you feel guilty? Following that is a silhouette of a woman and a noose slowly falling towards her, but we then cut away from that and see a ripped piece of paper from the Daily News explaining a woman's death. The woman's name is Marie, who's a 37-year-old that took her own life following the announcement of her daughter going missing. She was hanging from her home and she was discovered when a colleague requested a welfare check. We then see a familiar figure of a woman in the distance, and text when translated says, when the blood fades, what are we left with? The next familiar sight we see is a white screen with a sphere in the middle. Above that is the word sin, parasite, and host. Sins was also repeated a few times until we cut away to a view of firewood, pots and pans, and a dirty floor. In addition to that, we also hear a male voice yelling and screaming out in pain, and then the sounds of something squishy like munching noises, and that's when the screams stopped for a moment until it came back much louder. After this, we see a slightly mangled silhouette of a person and text which reads, forgive me, Airman. By the way, I didn't mention this the last time Airman was mentioned, but I'm doing it now. I think Airman is the name of Maria's husband. When it comes to urban legends, there are so many variations, as I mentioned before, some of which for some reason have different names for the husband character. And I'm not sure which one is the correct telling, but in a few of those stories, it did say that the husband was the reason why she has a gash on her face because he was trying to either defend himself or after realizing that she cooked up her kids, he lashed out and attacked her. Anyways, I just wanted to say this real quick before continuing so you all know who this airman is. And at least in the film, that was the husband's name? Huh? back to the video, we hear some gross squishy noises and see a cloudy night sky along with the sound of a woman weeping and footsteps before we get taken to a stimuli test for mental evaluation. The two samples we hear are a child's giggle, then the sounds of crackling, cracking, or crunching noises. It's a little confusing. And after this, we see a silhouette of two kids and a man. They slowly vanish one by one until they're replaced with a verse. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for something to devour. Peter. Delicate music was also playing during this, but that was cut short when the sounds of screams and crying could be heard. We also see the line, sins without redemption again, and later see a figure of a woman standing in darkness. We stay on that screen just for a moment until we get shown a gift and more text which reads, history repeats itself, the gift of life. The box opens and then everything turns dark and we hear laughter and see a pixely image in the middle. After that, we then see a realistic heart and more text. Can you still remember their faces? They would have wanted you to live, Maria. Why deny what is yours? My blood will stain the earth forever. We then see a familiar missing-jawed face, and the video ends with a closed folder, meaning the case and the series concludes here. Let's now move on to the conclusion and my final thoughts. Conclusion. Since we have an actual urban legend to reference off of, it shouldn't be too difficult to explain the series. However, if I do get something wrong, please tell me. Honestly, I get a lot of Mexican urban legends wrong, which is stupid since it's my culture. But again, every urban legend has so many variations, and since I know nothing about urban legends in the Philippines, I'm not too confident, but I'll still try my best. Now, in the series, the story of Maria should go as so if it is like the legend. If it is, Maria one day had to travel overseas for a job as a caretaker. That job led to her returning back home a little less normal, probably a demon or something strange, parasitic situation. Again, it's a little wonky, kind of mysterious. Regardless, once home, her hunger consumed her and she cooked up her children and ate them up. Soon after, her husband followed the same fate, and her husband must have tried to stop her and slashed at her face, but based on what we were shown in the series, in this version, he probably didn't make it, he didn't get away, and he died just like his children. Now, with her family dead and the need to constantly satiate her hunger, Maria is wandering aimlessly and one day comes across a child playing in the cornfield with a friend. She managed to lure one of the children her way and brutally attacked them like an animal feasting on a helpless rabbit. Ella is that child, but she isn't the only one who faced that gruesome fate, since we hear that there's multiple children vanishing, and because of Ella's disappearance, this resulted in her mother likely hitting rock bottom mentally and she took her own life, and probably her father did the same at some point. Maybe her father was that farmer in the therapy session, but I don't really know. But back to Maria. The reason why she's the way that she is because she has a parasite inside her, or a weird demonic entity influencing her and leeching off of her exactly like a parasite would. This makes Maria seem like a tortured soul. She doesn't want to do this, but she has no choice because she always has this bad influence whispering in her ear and an excruciating hunger that she wants to tame. And maybe, I could be wrong here, the spirits of her children are trying to save her by speaking to her, but how can they possibly reach their mother when such a powerful force is shutting them out? And at some point, they had no choice but to move on, I'm assuming, while their mother continues to prowl around the world, feasting on flesh. And also, that text that was repeated a few times in the series, sin without redemption. Maria is far too gone. Redemption isn't an option. She obviously didn't ask to have a demonic parasite inside her, but she still did all those things and listened to the demon on her shoulder. It's both sad and a shame. She completely lost her sanity and is now causing many families to suffer because of her hunger. So what's the moral of this story? Don't eat people? I mean, okay, that's obvious. That's an obvious thing. Don't eat people because it will just cause you suffering. You're basically just making yourself more sad, and in turn you're making other people more sad. Okay, sorry. With that, this is the LABO tapes and the conclusion of today's video. The links are in the description if you're interested in checking out the series yourself, or if you want to see the other videos, go on ahead. But first, don't forget to like, subscribe, do that funny little notification thing, maybe check out my other social medias, leave a comment, and as always, my name is Estrella. I better not catch you dying on me. Goodbye!